Oh boy. Okay, so updates with the show, man. We got a copyright infringement
Yeah.
notice. I looked into it, and did you see the correspondence?
Yeah, they sent an email that basically said, "Oh, our bad. Your episode's
Yeah.
back up."
So it was really weird. So just some background was, uh, when the show was in its infancy, we used to just be songwriting, and that just as time went on and I became more involved as a dad. No, I've always been involved as a dad, but like life got going, it just became more and more difficult to write and release songs on the show in a timely manner. So we kind of had to abandon that model entirely for now. We intend to get back onto it. But the way it worked was there'd be an early episode, we would write a song, we'd play the song, and then we would record the song separately and release it later. And that song itself would be like, to Spreaker, it would be the next episode. But what's been happening is Spreaker has something in their terms of service where, they're not a music hosting platform, which is fair. They're a podcasting company. You're not there to promote music, or you're not there to show the song, but you can talk about the song. So they had been routinely removing those episodes. Hey, we reviewed this. This is a song. This isn't a podcast episode, which is fair. I take no issue with them doing that. I understand. If anything, that's a kick in our butt to get those songs released properly on Spotify, Apple Music.
Yeah, throw them through like DistroKid or CD Baby.
Yeah, exactly. To put the song itself through the proper channels. So what they flagged was the first song we wrote with Quinn McCarthy. It's a cool episode. The very first episode of the show, they flagged the song itself in the very next episode, and they said this is a claim for copyright infringement. And I thought that's ridiculous, because the episode right before it shows us writing the song live, something I and Quinn, we can both attest to that. This song is an original piece of work. The process happens in the very beginning episode. I am one of the songwriters. There's no way we're infringing on copyright.
You documented the creation process too, so it's impossible to say that
I willfully infringed, right? It's impossible to say that I did it on purpose, because that happens. People will be accidentally writing a song that has the same melody or similar lyrics, or God forbid it has the same subjective essence of the song, and then they get an infringement. Hey, you plagiarized my work. Well, I didn't mean to. Intent is important, but impact, you basically wrote the same song. It does happen, and it's rare, and it takes a lot of, to determine that. It takes some pretty skilled legal minds, I guess, sometimes to see if it's truly infringement. But that's what I asked to see. I reached out to their legal department, and I said, hey, this is an original piece of work. We didn't willfully infringe on anyone's copyright. Can you please tell me the details of the claim? And so, Leo, you and I were talking, and we were like, well, maybe Quinn copyrighted the song and his PRO did a search. Because don't they send out like bots and they just scour the internet for similarities?
Yeah, when we got the email, I had immediately thought, because that same situation happened to me with the song that I wrote in another band. I got a copyright. So there's a difference between and this was on YouTube. There's a difference between a copyright claim and a strike. A strike, you only get 3. Right. And a claim is like, hey, they give you the opportunity. You're going to keep the song up, but you're not going to be able to monetize it. So all the plays are going to go to the copyright holder, which is fine. But so I thought in this case, maybe Quinn, within the time of you guys record, because we recorded that episode, 3 years ago? Yeah. In the time that the episode was recorded, you guys released the song, he said, hey, I like this song. I'm going to publish it through a distributor, DistroKid, CD Baby, TuneCore, whatever, and put it up on Spotify. And then he registered it with his PRO, be it BMI or ASCAP. And that's what I thought happened, because I have seen they'll go retroactively in your back catalog like of songs that I'll release them like a snippet of a trailer of a song, right? Like a little teaser, and put it on TikTok, YouTube, and then I'll get a copyright flag that basically says, "Hey, this isn't your song," which it is my song, but it's just kind of like an automated process that bots have, depending on like what you opt in through your distributor and your PRO, and they'll flag it. So I thought that's what happened, but you told me Quinn had not released the song. The only place that song was.
It's really tricky reaching out to an artist to ask them if they are flagging your material, because that can come off as insulting. And I didn't want to offend Quinn. Like, I reached out to him and I said, hey, we checked in. I just want to check up Quinn. I'm doing my due diligence. Someone flagged our episode or our song for a copyright infringement. Did you initiate a claim? Or I was just kind of bringing it up. I didn't say that. I didn't ask him outright, but he brought it. He asked me. He says, "Are you asking if I reported our episode for copyright?" I said, "I am, but only because I'm sure you didn't, and I want to make sure I can clear you so we can figure out where this went." So he said in text, right, writing, whatever. He was like, "I, Quinn McCarthy, did not, issue a copyright claim on this song." And I said, "Have you published this song since the time of its writing with any performance rights organization or any entity with publishing power?" And he said, "No, I did not publish this song." So it wasn't Quinn, and he didn't issue it, so I included him in the correspondence as well. So I'm like, well, why the heck would they issue a copyright infringement? So I reached back out to Spreaker's legal team, and it took them about 2 hours to they acknowledged my message. It was like a chat message, right? They acknowledged it and they said, let me look into this. And they came back with just paragraphs and paragraphs of like intellectual property law and like all this intellectual property policy. And we take this very seriously, and copyright claims aren't to be, whatever, yada, yada. And I responded with like, hey.
Yeah. So in essence, they stonewalled you. Like they're just throwing the book at you. Yeah.
So they tried that. So I responded with, I'm a paralegal, and my own specialty, my area that I pursue is intellectual property and copyright law. So I'm very familiar with the laws surrounding IP. And I responded with that. I said, I know these laws. I know what's limiting, what's prohibited, and I understand. But this is not copyright infringement. I didn't infringe on anyone's property unless you can prove that I did. And if you're not showing me that information, then this claim is baseless. This is what I pretty much said. Like, there's no validity. If you are removing my episode because it violates your rule on having music on the platform, that I can get behind. That I understand. But do not accuse me of infringing copyright when you don't have the proof to back it up. And that was Leo. That was when they responded with, we're very sorry, we've reinstated the episode, and we've wiped any sort of claims made against you. So, I feel like their bot flagged it. What I'm guessing is their bot was going through our episodes, found us performing it the first time in our show, found the similarities between the next episode, and was like, oh, this is in another podcast episode, and it didn't connect the two, that it was the same people doing it, and so we got the infringement flag.
Yeah, even that is weird. Like, if they're going through retroactively going through old episodes, what if it's a podcast that uses the same song as their introduction? You know what I mean?
Right.
That's a weird way of like flagging material for copyright, and there's no way for them to prove whether or not that song was an original piece that you consigned or that you wrote yourself and that you produced and you put it on the podcast, which in this case you did. Well, so yeah, just that, I've never seen it happen like that before on a podcast.
No, and which that brings up a larger concern, because in the law, the book that they threw at me, right? They were saying if you're using someone else's music on your podcast for an intro or something, like, you need to independently obtain their permission to use it. But here's what bothers me is they didn't notify me of the claim before they took down the episode. They took it down and then notified me. And that's something that I think is frustrating, because you don't have the chance to prove yourself. You know, like you'd think it'd be like you have 30 days to address this claim, or we remove the episode. You know what I mean? Like there should be a limit. And
well, they're doing that to protect themselves. I mean, that's a monetary thing, right? Because if you compound that over a bunch of copyright infractions over every single episode on their platform, you know, that's saving them the legal retribution of like, oh, we have. So they're pro, not act first, find out later.
Right. Shoot first, ask questions later. I understand that approach, but the problem is I can't even access the episode as it's posted, right? I, as the creator, can't even go in and try to find where, if it was a different episode, where the claim is they're saying. They don't provide any context. They remove the whole thing, and you can't even go in to see what's contested. And so where I'm like nervous is, okay, they did this to an episode where I was one of the original songwriters. But with our listening episodes, we have permission from the songwriter, like Donnie Hart. We have his song in the episode itself because we listen to it and we review it. But I also use portions of the song as our intro and outro. I obtain permission from the songwriter to do so. That's part of the agreement when they have the song on there. But, like, what if they remove the episodes? Does it matter that I have agreement? Is there any way for me... I need to find if there's a way for me to submit the... You know, the... what is the term? What's the word? Submit the proof that I have their permission.
You have a contract with the songwriter giving you explicit permission. This is an issue, and this is a bigger issue that I've come across with, like, songs that I fucking wrote, and I'm getting flagged. Like, I've had multiple videos that I used old songs that I wrote, and I published into TikTok or, you know, a social media platform, and they got taken down or the sound got muted, and they were like, oh, you don't have the copyright to it. I'm like, I kind of do because I wrote the song. But there's no really, there's the recourse for that, like the actual process for you, it's like so convoluted, and you'll get the same kind of thing that Spreaker did. I think that's just the way they handle these things, that they throw the book at you of like, hey, these are the things that you're, you know, and they don't really take into consideration like, oh, well, maybe I'm talking to the person that actually composed and wrote this song. And that's a bigger topic with like our consumption of like music, copyright law, social media, and like the way and the mediums we're actually using these things. And like they're kind of doing an overbearing blanket of protection on themselves from a financial standpoint, which is mind-boggling to me because TikTok, even Instagram, like some people that are actually posting their own music will get a copy, like, hey, we're taking this down, this is copyright. And then you see another profile and they're using like Back in Black by AC/DC and it has like 2.5 million views, and you're like, how does that work?
It's like random. It's like it doesn't. They're not. It's. I just think I think it goes up to chance, right? Like the bots aren't going through. They're just. It's like a shotgun blast. They just scatter and they go in all directions and they hit wherever here or wherever there. It's not a focused approach because honestly, why would it be? The manpower it would take to comb through all of that data, all of these videos. You have to use the bots, but it's
impossible.
Yeah, but it's artificial intelligence. I mean, and that's the larger conversation too. AI is stupid, just inherently. It's dumb. It's machine learning, and it's learning from all this whatever exists already. But we're constantly
it's finding patterns in waveforms, and if they're identical or similar. Yeah. It's an issue with covers too.
Right.
I mean, and YouTube has some blanket licenses for covers.
Well, it's funny you bring up YouTube because YouTube is like one of the biggest villains in this whole thing. Copyright.
Notorious, for sure.
There's no. We've talked before about like educational YouTube channels where they're not turning a profit except through donations, and it's not illegal to solicit donations for something educational, right? So long as you're not requiring people to pay for it. But then, under copyright law, intellectual property law, if you're using intellectual property for educational purposes, you don't need to pay a mechanical fee. You don't need to pay royalties on it. And so we've brought up like Adam Neely, for instance, where he's a jazz bass player, but his YouTube channel, actually I don't think he has a YouTube channel anymore. He's on Nebula. But YouTube, he's like, I'm an educator. My videos are educational. They're free. No one has to pay to use it. I don't turn a profit from the videos themselves, only from people who donate to me to keep this going. But YouTube will regularly flag him for using songs to demonstrate some educational, some musical, whatever. I'm driving home from work. I'm not in that mindset, so words are coming hard to me. But he's trying to demonstrate some musical properties, some technique or whatever. And he gets flagged. So he moved to Nebula, which is a different platform. You have to pay to use Nebula, but Nebula is for educational, informative creators. So Adam Neely is on there. I follow I subscribe to Nebula in certain channels. And what they are is if a creator on Nebula gets flagged, Nebula doesn't remove the material, but they investigate the copyright flag. They look into it themselves, and that's like a big deal with them. That was one of their main focuses. So it's doable. It's possible to be creator friendly as opposed to copyright friendly, but also Nebula is a paid service. So you kind of pay for
and
that.
it's not as bloated as YouTube. YouTube
Correct.
is owned by Google, and they know where their profit margins and like their income is coming from, and they're not making money when they go and they put a team of a legal team together to investigate copyright infringement.
Right.
It's small potatoes for them. Nebula, their entire business model is predicated on the educational piece, so they will have the infrastructure and the bandwidth to investigate that.
That's true.
It's weird because we're in this kind of limbo stage of the mediums in which people are, and education's a perfect example because most, I would say 99.9% of all music education is passed down from prior material. Like you're not improv jazz fusioning to teach a kid, the do re mi scale. You're showing him Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Baba Black Sheep. And those might be in public domain, but I'm like for educational pieces. If you're like, hey, I want to investigate Harry Styles, and I'm going to show you the chord changes and the melody and how they work together. And you're using that educationally, but there's no bias as far as you're going to get flagged regardless because the standards in which YouTube and these bigger platforms, that's the other thing too, is like the sheer magnitude of the reach of the heavy hitters like YouTube and TikTok is exponentially bigger than a platform like Nebula. So not allowing creators to make these completely legal educational pieces, not infringing copyright, but flagging them for copyright, and then you have to go through this huge kind of dialogue of like why it's not copyright, which is it's hilarious to me because the ball is in the court of these legal departments, and they just kind of throw this blanket statement of like, oh well, this is copyright law. And then they come across someone like you who's like, actually, I know copyright law, and I'm also the creator of this content. I think it's important for creators to know, not to be paralegals but have to be a little bit educated in the subject matter because it's important.
No, you're right.
Us as creators.
Yeah. And personally too, Leo, and I'm not trying to be like, I'm like this guy, but that's like my goal to eventually work in the legal side with intellectual properties. I want artists to know their rights. I want you to know the powers that you have, because inevitably, whether or not it's right, you will get flagged for copyright. Like at some point, you'll probably come across that. And the thing is, my experience with Spreaker, and the reason why I'm not pulling our content from Spreaker and moving it elsewhere on principle, A, that's a huge pain in the ass, but B, is like I presented my issue. I reached out to their team, and they responded, and they did their due diligence, right? They threw the book at me and said, this is law. And it's your duty as a creator, if you believe in your material and you think it was wrong, engage with them. Talk to them. They're doing their jobs. But they were very reasonable when I explained, no. I know this. I've read this. This doesn't match. They were assessed, and they listened, and they complied with what I said because I fought for my stuff. Whether or not the song is worth fighting for is subjective, right? But it is a matter of principle, I suppose. I don't want to be accused of infringing copyright ever, because that goes against who I am as a creator and a musician. But if you're an artist and this happens, do your due diligence, educate yourself, and engage with the people. And you don't even need to be hostile about it. You do collect more flies with honey than you do vinegar, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing. I got frustrated. I got a little, like, what the hell? But if you maintain a good dialogue and you have this conversation, things likely will go your way, unless you actually infringe copyright, in which case, like, don't do that, man. So
there's two things I feel like artists can do. Right now, something that I've changed in the difference between how I used to publish my music 5 years ago as to how I publish now. One thing is I opt out specifically for YouTube Music. I don't publish to YouTube Music. And the reason why is because you can publish your own stuff through YouTube Music without using a distributor. When you go through a distributor to publish your music on these major platforms, you are automatically in their system, and their bot algorithm will, like, if you were to publish, like, say you have a music video and then you publish another little small snippet of your same video, your video is going to get flagged. So opting out and kind of looking at where you're putting your music and having the control of, like, okay, I'm gonna publish through a distributor on these platforms, but I'm gonna do it on my own on TikTok or YouTube, whatever. That's one thing artists can do to prevent it. The other thing is what you mentioned is, like, not do your homework, but, like, escalate. And if you do get copyright flagged, and, like, I've never done that just because I don't have the time. I've never had a video pulled down, but I have gotten a copyright claim on music that I had released, and I know exactly where it's coming from. It's because I used a distribution platform, whether it's Songtradr. By the way, Bandcamp got purchased by Songtradr.
Oh, really?
Yeah, recently, I think within the last week. So change is coming to Bandcamp, which is funny because Bandcamp, their entire business model was like for, through, and by indie musicians, and they're getting kind of the corporate model. But whatever.
Someone else will pop up.
Yeah. And it's so arduous, and that's the point. Yeah. Like, they make these processes so painful, arduous, and annoying so that you just kind of like, oh, I give up. But when you are the composer and the writer of a song, and this is the perfect situation, like in your example of this episode, like, you literally have a recorded podcast of you creating the song on the spot, and they're throwing copyright at you. One, that's erroneous, and two, it's insulting.
Right. So it was, and the thing I need to clarify, though, it wasn't the podcast where we made the song, it was the song itself. But yes, either way, it was like, obviously there wasn't a person reviewing it. It was a bot. And I think that's such a strong indictment, infringement, versus I don't even know. I think, yeah, it did scan the episode before, and then it scanned ours, and it wasn't like, oh, it's the same account, same song, fine. So that's just the disconnect, unless someone maliciously put in a copyright claim, which I don't know who I hurt.
I mean, to have the know-how to do that, and to know that you're, like, to go through the channels. It's such a waste of time, and I don't think that is like Occam's razor, man. Right. It's the easiest explanation is the most simple one. Right. It is the answer. Like, they and it's not like Spreaker is going out and searching other catalogs. They're searching their catalog. Right. and they found a match, they found a pattern, like, oh, this song sounds like this song from the previous episode, and they slapped a, it's the simplest and most logical explanation. The other part of this too, because we are using these AI technologies corporations are using AI technologies now more than ever to do this work, because to an extent, I'm pretty sure they still have farms of people, working circles of 12-hour shifts where they're just sitting and looking for copyright.
You know what? They don't. That's the funny thing. I don't think they do. I think it's like one or two people, and when like something pops up once or twice, then they put the person into review if it actually is an infringement. I think
otherwise they're using algorithms.
Right. I think it's largely algorithms, and it's 3 or 4 people, because the algorithms are there to cut back on that farm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But the other part of that is, like, people are starting to create with AI more so. Like, I remember when the technology first came out a year or two ago, people are creating quote unquote new pieces of work, of art, visual, musical, using AI platforms. There's AI software that you can create a song. The thing with AI, and I've seen multiple articles released on this, is that, one, it's not protected under copyright law yet, as from what I've read over over summertime. But AI has to use, it's the same way we learn music, right? It uses things that already exist. It scours the internet, it scours databases and catalogs, and it creates based off of things that have priorly existed.
Well, based on the prompt you give it too, yeah.
Based on the prompt. I want a song that sounds like Matt Healy from 1975 mixed with Snoop Dogg. In that, creating this new piece that has never existed, you might run into copyright law, because the same platforms that are creating these, like, they're looking for patterns, and they're looking for things, patterns of music. They're also, the same platforms can also flag you for finding those same patterns. So it's kind of a weird dichotomy. It's like, we're using these platforms, corporations are using these softwares to find copyright infringements, but then creators are using those same platforms to create new work. It's weird, man.
And I think we need to do an episode, I think the 4 of us, when it comes to AI, because I think it's such a big topic. But personally, I think AI is good to use as a tool and a starting point. But if you do release a full song, I think that's appropriate to exclude AI-generated songs from copyright protection. Honestly,
it's the same anytime when we've talked about disruptive technologies before. Like, we always mention Beethoven and the release of the pianoforte. Any time, or the vinyl recordings, the 2-inch tape, digital media. Anytime new technology is thrust upon the population, there's kind of this learning curve. There's an adoption, and then it plateaus, and it just becomes status quo. Everybody starts using it. We haven't hit that plateau yet. I think we're still in that, like, adoption curve of people starting to utilize it. But it's the same thing. It's a tool, like you said. Once people, and, like, that's the beauty of, like, the human element of creativity, is, like, once we learn, folks start learning, and I've seen people do it. They start playing around. There's an account called There I Ruined It, and they use AI modeling technology.
Yes.
Love that account. And their music, the creator is a musician. Like, that they're in the box, and they know how to compose and record. And they use AI technologies to recreate voices like Johnny Cash, like iconic rock or iconic popular music voices.
Like a Red Hot Chili Peppers version, like Johnny Cash song.
Wet Ass Pussy by Cardi B,
Yeah, there you go. Even better. And to his credit too, like, he's also, his original stuff is really good if you ever check it out. I downloaded a couple songs from him, or I have a couple songs in the playlist. But you're right, like, it's an entertainment purpose, and he can't copyright that because you're using someone's I don't know if it's someone's likeness, vocal likeness, if they do a Johnny Cash thing, but I think it goes back to intention. Do you want to make money off this stuff? And if you do, if you want to make money off of music, you should write it. You have to write it yourself. You have to make it yourself, or you cannot have the public domain do it for you. And I think that's what AI music should be classified, because it came from, it sourced its material from the public. Any song generated with AI should be a public domain. I think.
I mean,
I hope the laws go that way.
You get into the policing of that, though, right? Because you would almost need a separate bureaucracy, like a government entity, to monitor whether or not things are being created the old-fashioned way, or like, was there an element of this? Like, is there a digital watermark on materials that you use to, like, it's like ChatGPT, right? I use ChatGPT to prompt an email,
right,
and then I send that email out. There's no way to see if I copy and pasted that stuff over from ChatGPT. And the same with music, right? Like, who's going to monitor whether or not that was?
So I think it's a matter of disclosure, right? Like, I feel like, oh my God, this should be total material for a completely separate episode. But when it comes to, like, how do you monitor it? Maybe it's a matter of labeling it. Like, with GMOs, like GMO produce. By law, if produce is created with GMOs, it has to be, or if the produce is a GMO, it needs to be labeled as such, right? If you're releasing music or any sort of creative artwork, it needs to be labeled somewhere, somehow, as AI generated. And maybe that needs to be something like ChatGPT. If something is created with ChatGPT, somewhere in that image, it may not even have to be visible, some type of watermark that a bot can see labels it as, hey, this was AI generated. Maybe that's the answer. Disclosure that the creators can't see, but the bots do. I mean, we do it with music, right? When a song is created, within its...
You get an ISRC code.
Yeah, the
right?
ISRC.
It's a digital watermark inside the song.
Correct.
So if you download it,
ChatGPT
no matter where you get it from, it has the ISRC.
Yep. And I think maybe that's the solution to AI-generated music. Whatever engine generated it has to automatically input that that ISRC, that unlistenable, or is that inaudible frequency that labels it as AI generated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as like pirated software. Yeah. There was a DJ that had, a lot of views, streams, sales on their music, and came to find out that like there was a digital watermark that he was using a cracked version of like Logic or something like that. He got in trouble
FL Studio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the bottom line, Leo, is, educate yourself, do your homework, know your rights as a creator so you can defend the work that you've worked so hard to create and put up there. And understand that not all copyright claims are going to have merit. Some of them, most of them, I would say, are just the bots doing what they're programmed to do. And if you just cooperate with the people, or not cooperate, but you talk to the people, you contest the claims. If you have the energy and the time, the first time you do it's going to be the hardest. After that, if you get more, one, maybe you should consider why you keep getting these claims. But two, it'll be easier to go forward and move. I mean, copy and paste it, create your own template.
A template. I mean, and some forms of music tend to fall into the category of, hitting copyright infringement more than others. Here's my question to you. Do you think the current state of copyright law protects the creator or it protects the corporation more?
I think That's a good question. And I think it's a question we should address on another episode. I'm at where I need to be, Leo. food for thought. Folks, if you listen to this and you like to participate, do you think that copyright law benefits the creator or it benefits the corporation? And maybe we need to get into the legal definition of what the creator is.
Yeah.
That's a loaded question, and I think it's one worth exploring. Let's do another mini episode on this. Let's do a part 2.
I'll let you think. Marinate on that one. Sounds good.
Sir. Yes, sir.
I like your pin, Kurt. You got a nice, shiny Just One Song pin. It's beautiful.
That's right. Just One Song pin. We're exploring the idea of getting some swag. I'll post a picture of it. Right now, I think based on my own personal budget, because that's how I pay for this stuff, is I buy it myself. But any sort of guests on the show, I think I want to go back and start sending some of this swag out to people we've had on the show. But there's a neat little pin. I'll post it to our Instagram. I'll post it to our Facebook, whoever uses that anymore. I do. But yeah, some Just One Song swag. Maybe we'll start looking into how we can better get this out to our fans and the people who listen, just some marketing. But in the meantime, let's get some more episodes out. And Leo, I love talking to you. I love chatting about this stuff. Let's get another one out soon. I miss you, brother.
Sounds good, bro. Great talk.
Oh, by the way, credit to Wolfgang. He's a bartender in LA. He's got his own pop-up business, but he also designed all of our logos. Terrific bass player, fantastic bartender, excellent graphic designer, and just a wonderful friend too. So shout out to you, Wolfgang. If you listen to this, I'm going to send you some swag your way as well. So anyway.
And thank you for legitimizing this podcast with an awesome logo.
Dude,
I feel like
absolutely.
you get into the realm of like legitimacy when you have like a cool identifier. And Wolfgang, thank you.
I think we have the coolest. I think we have one of the coolest logos of any podcast I've ever seen. It's super sharp. It's really pleasing to the eyes. You've seen my business cards. I'm gonna drop some of those more off, and I dropped a ton at NAMM. So, oh yeah, Leo, I gotta make you some business cards.
Beautiful,
I'll
gorgeous.
Send some
Love
your
it.
way with the QR code on the back.
Look at that.
Fancy schmancy.
Well, shout out to Wolfgang. Shout out to Kurt for doing a due diligence and making sure that our episode stays up so these fine folks and our listeners can hear it whenever they want. Oh, this is Leandro Barrientos and my good friend here.
This is Kurt Bemke with Leo Barrientos. Thank you for listening to Just One Song.